The black Rolls-Royce pulled up to the curb with the kind of confidence that screamed money. Vincent Drake stepped out, adjusting his custom-made suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He didn't bother looking at the valet who rushed to take his keys. People like Vincent never did. The Harmony Bistro was the kind of place where reservations were made months in advance, where the wealthy came to see and be seen. Vincent had a standing reservation every Thursday evening. Tonight was special, though. He was meeting 3 investors from Singapore who were interested in his latest tech venture. Everything had to be perfect. The moment he walked through the doors, something felt off. The restaurant had a strange quietness to it. Usually, soft piano music filled the air, mixing with the gentle clink of wine glasses and hushed conversations. But tonight there was nothing. Just the awkward sound of silverware scraping against expensive china. Vincent's jaw tightened. He hated imperfection. "Mr. Drake, welcome back," the manager greeted him with a nervous smile. His name was Peter, and he'd been working at the Harmony Bistro for almost 15 years. He knew Vincent well. Too well. "Where's the music, Peter?" Vincent didn't waste time with pleasantries. "You know I have important guests tonight." Peter shifted uncomfortably. "I'm terribly sorry, sir. Our pianist called in sick just an hour ago. We've been trying to find a replacement, but on such short notice—" "I don't care about excuses," Vincent cut him off. "I care about solutions. My guest will be here in 10 minutes, and I expect this place to have the ambiance I'm paying for." "Of course, sir. We're doing everything we can." Vincent walked to his usual table near the window, the best spot in the house. He pulled out his phone and started scrolling through emails, already irritated. In his world, problems were supposed to disappear with money. That's what money was for. The investors arrived exactly on time. Mr. Tan, Mrs. Lee, and Mr. Wong were polite and formal, dressed in elegant business attire. Vincent stood to greet them, putting on his most charming smile. The kind of smile that had convinced hundreds of people to invest millions into his companies over the years. They ordered wine, made small talk about their flight, discussed the weather. But Vincent could feel the flatness in the air. The missing piano music created an emptiness that even the most expensive wine couldn't fill. A waitress approached their table. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her uniform was neat, her smile professional but tired, the kind of tired that comes from being on your feet for too many hours. "Good evening, gentlemen, ma'am. My name is Claire, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you off with some appetizers?" Vincent barely looked at her as he ordered. To him, she was just part of the background, like the paintings on the wall or the flowers on the table. Functional, forgettable. But then he noticed her hands. As she wrote down their orders, Vincent saw something. Her fingers had small calluses on the tips, the kind that came from pressing down on something repeatedly. He'd seen hands like that before. His aunt used to have them from years of playing piano. An idea formed in his mind. A terrible, arrogant idea. When Claire returned with their appetizers, Vincent stopped her. "You there?" "Wait a moment," she turned, surprised. "Yes, sir? Is everything all right with your order?" "Your hands," Vincent said, pointing at them like he was identifying a flaw in a product. "You play piano, don't you?" Claire looked down at her hands, then back at him, confused. I used to, but I don't see how—" "Perfect." Vincent cut her off with a wave of his hand. He turned to his guests with a satisfied smile. "See? Problem solved." Then back to Claire. "There's a piano sitting silent in the corner. I need you to play it now." The color drained from Claire's face. "Sir, I'm working. I'm your waitress tonight. I don't recall asking if you could." Vincent's voice turned cold. "I'm telling you to. I'm paying good money to dine here, and part of that payment includes entertainment. Since your establishment has failed to provide that, you'll have to do." Mr. Tan looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Lee glanced away. Mr. Wong cleared his throat awkwardly. Even they could sense this was wrong, but nobody spoke up. Claire's hands trembled slightly. "Sir, with all due respect, I'm here to serve food, not to perform. Perhaps if you spoke with the manager—" "Oh, I will speak with the manager." Vincent pulled out his wallet and slapped a $20 bill on the table. "But first you're going to play. Consider this a tip for your musical services. Unless you'd rather I speak to Peter about your refusal to accommodate important guests." The threat hung in the air like poison. Claire understood what he was really saying. Refuse and she might lose her job. In this economy, with bills to pay and responsibilities she couldn't escape, losing this job wasn't an option. Other diners were starting to notice the commotion. Heads turned. Whispers began. Vincent didn't care. He was used to getting what he wanted when he wanted it. Peter appeared at the table, sensing trouble. "Is everything all right here?" "Your waitress seems confused about customer service," Vincent said smoothly. "I've simply asked her to play the piano since you've failed to provide a pianist tonight." "Surely that's not too much to ask." Peter looked at Claire, then at Vincent, then at the $20 bill on the table. His face showed the internal struggle of a man who needed to keep both his staff and his wealthy customers happy. "Unfortunately, in restaurants like this, wealthy customers usually won." "Claire," Peter said quietly, apologetically, "if you wouldn't mind, just for a little while, I'll have someone cover your tables." Claire's eyes filled with something Vincent couldn't quite read. Sadness, anger, resignation. She looked at the $20 bill, then at Vincent's smug face, then at the silent grand piano in the corner. "Fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She walked to the back, removed her apron, and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking as she approached the piano. The entire restaurant had grown quiet now, watching this unexpected drama unfold. Vincent leaned back in his chair, satisfied. He picked up his wine glass and took a sip, ready to enjoy what he assumed would be some mediocre background music played by a struggling waitress. He had no idea that in the next 60 seconds, his entire world was about to change. Claire sat down at the piano bench, straightened her back, and placed her trembling fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, and something shifted in her expression. The nervousness faded, replaced by something else. Something powerful. She began to play. The first notes that came from the piano were soft, almost hesitant. Vincent smirked and leaned toward Mr. Tan. "See? Amateur hour? But at least it's something." He reached for his wine glass, ready to continue his business pitch. But then something changed. The music suddenly exploded into something else entirely. Claire's fingers began moving across the keys with a speed and precision that seemed almost impossible. The gentle introduction transformed into a powerful, cascading waterfall of notes that filled every corner of the restaurant. Vincent's hand froze halfway to his wine glass. This wasn't background music. This wasn't some simple melody you'd hear in an elevator or a hotel lobby. This was something else. Something extraordinary. Claire was playing Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, one of the most technically demanding pieces in classical music. Her fingers flew across the keys, hitting every note with perfect accuracy, her hands crossing over each other in movements that looked almost like a dance. The music swelled and dipped, soft one moment, thunderous the next. The entire restaurant went completely silent. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. Forks were set down. Wine glasses were forgotten. Even the kitchen staff peeked through the service window to see what was happening. Vincent's smirk disappeared. His mouth actually fell open slightly. Mrs. Lee gasped, her hand going to her chest. That's Rachmaninoff," she whispered. "Nobody plays it like that unless—" The music continued to build, growing more complex with each passing second. Claire's entire body moved with the rhythm, swaying slightly as her fingers struck the keys with both power and incredible delicacy. Her eyes were closed now, and there was an expression on her face that Vincent had never seen on anyone before. It was pure emotion, raw, unfiltered, beautiful. This wasn't a waitress playing piano. This was an artist creating magic. Other diners began pulling out their phones, recording the performance. An older woman at a nearby table had tears streaming down her face. Her husband held her hand tightly, his own eyes glistening with moisture. "My wife used to play this," the old man said to no one in particular, his voice choked with emotion. "Before the arthritis took her hands, she'd play it every Sunday morning." His wife squeezed his hand, unable to speak, just listening and remembering. Vincent sat frozen, his entire body tense. Something uncomfortable was crawling up his spine. Was it embarrassment, shame? He couldn't quite name it, but it felt awful. Mr. Wong leaned forward, his business proposition completely forgotten. "Mr. Drake," he said quietly, his eyes never leaving Claire. "Do you know what you're witnessing right now? This is concert hall level playing. World class." The music shifted again, moving into a section that was achingly beautiful. Claire's fingers seemed to barely touch the keys now, creating notes so delicate they felt like they might shatter in the air. Several people in the restaurant were openly crying now, not from sadness, but from the sheer beauty of what they were hearing. A woman at the bar suddenly gasped loudly. She grabbed her phone and started frantically scrolling, her eyes wide. Then she grabbed her companion's arm, shaking it urgently. "Oh my God," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Oh my God, I know who that is." She turned her phone screen toward her friend, showing her something. Then she stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor, though Claire never stopped playing. "That's Claire Bennett," the woman announced to the restaurant, her voice filled with awe. "The Claire Bennett!" Vincent's head snapped toward the woman. "What are you talking about?" The woman walked closer, still holding her phone. "Claire Bennett. She was a child prodigy. She played at Carnegie Hall when she was just 12 years old. Look." She showed her phone to the nearest table, and soon people were passing it around, looking at articles and videos. Peter, the manager, had gone pale. He pulled out his own phone, searching quickly. His eyes went wide as he read. Vincent grabbed his own phone with shaking hands and typed in the name. Article after article appeared. Photos of a much younger Claire in an elegant concert dress, standing on famous stages around the world. Awards, competitions, reviews from music critics calling her once in a generation, and a gift to classical music, Claire Bennett. Winner of the Van Cliburn International Piano Competition at age 19, one of the most prestigious awards in classical music. She'd toured internationally, performed with major orchestras, recorded albums that critics praised. She'd been featured in magazines, on television, in newspapers around the world, and Vincent had just treated her like a servant. Like she was nothing. He'd thrown $20 at her like she was a street performer. The music continued, building toward the finale. Claire's whole body seemed to pour into the performance now. Every note was perfect, every transition seamless. This was what she was meant to do. This was who she really was beneath the waitress uniform and the tired smile. The final section of the piece was approaching, and Claire attacked it with a passion that made the piano seem like it might explode. Her fingers hammered the keys, creating a sound so powerful and moving that the entire restaurant seemed to vibrate with it. And then, with one final triumphant chord, it was over. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The silence was absolute. Then the restaurant erupted. People leapt to their feet, applauding so loudly it was almost deafening. They weren't just clapping politely. They were giving her a standing ovation, the kind usually reserved for concert halls and opera houses. People were cheering, whistling, some still crying. "Bravo!" someone shouted. "Incredible!" called another voice. Claire opened her eyes slowly, as if waking from a dream. She looked around at all the people standing and applauding, and for a moment she looked lost. Then her eyes found Vincent's table and the dream shattered. Reality came crashing back. She was still wearing her waitress uniform. She was still working, and she was still being paid $20 for what she'd just done. Vincent couldn't move. Everyone around him was standing and clapping, but he remained seated, frozen in his chair. His face had gone from its usual confident smirk to something else entirely. He looked sick, actually physically sick. Mrs. Lee was standing, tears on her cheeks, applauding enthusiastically. Mr. Tan was shaking his head in amazement. Mr. Wong looked at Vincent with an expression that might have been disappointment or pity, or both. Peter rushed toward the piano, his face a mixture of shame and sorrow. "Claire, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. I never would have asked you to." A woman from another table hurried over, her phone still in her hand. "Claire Bennett? It really is you, isn't it? I saw you perform in Boston 5 years ago. You were magnificent. But I don't understand. Why are you working here? What happened?" The applause was finally dying down, but people were moving closer now, surrounding the piano, all wanting to talk to Claire, to understand, to ask questions. Claire stood up from the piano bench, her legs shaky. She looked overwhelmed, exhausted, and somehow smaller than she had while playing. The magic was fading, and she was just a tired waitress again. She started, but her voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I have my reasons." "But you're Claire Bennett," the woman insisted. "You were supposed to tour Europe. You had contracts with major orchestras. What happened to all of that?" Vincent finally found the strength to stand, though his legs felt weak. He wanted to say something, anything, but no words came out. What could he possibly say? Sorry. That word felt pathetically inadequate for what he'd done. Claire's eyes swept across the crowd of people, then landed on Vincent. In that moment, looking directly at him, she spoke. "Life happened," she said simply. "Sometimes dreams have to wait. Sometimes other things are more important." And then, before anyone could ask more questions, before the crowd could press in closer, Claire turned and walked quickly toward the back of the restaurant. Disappearing through the kitchen doors, the dining room buzzed with conversation. Everyone was talking about what they'd just witnessed. Phones were out, with people looking up articles, watching old performance videos, trying to piece together the mystery. Vincent stood there, the $20 bill still sitting on his table, now looking like an insult. "Like trash," Mr. Tan spoke first, his voice quiet but firm. "Mr. Drake, I think perhaps we should reschedule our meeting. This doesn't seem like the right time." Vincent could only nod, unable to find his voice. As the investors gathered their things to leave, Vincent remained standing, staring at the now empty piano bench, his mind racing with one terrible question. What had he done? And she'd become someone who knew that success meant nothing if you didn't reach back and help the next person climb up too. The music continued, simple scales transforming into something more as Lily's confidence grew. And Grace smiled, knowing that this, right here, right now, was exactly where she was meant to. Vincent sat back down at his table after the investors left. The restaurant was still buzzing with excited conversations about what had just happened. People were showing each other videos they'd recorded, reliving the performance, sharing articles about Claire Bennett on their phones. But Vincent couldn't move. He just sat there staring at the empty piano bench, that $20 bill still sitting on his table like a monument to his own stupidity. Peter was moving between tables, apologizing profusely to guests for the disruption, though nobody seemed to mind. In fact, people were thanking him for the unexpected concert. Several diners were asking if Claire would come back out, maybe sign something, maybe play another piece. Vincent picked up his phone and went deeper into the search results about Claire Bennett. There were dozens of articles, concert reviews from major newspapers, videos of her performances from years ago, when she was younger, when her eyes had a different kind of light in them, a brightness that he hadn't seen tonight. One article from about 6 years ago caught his attention. It was titled "Rising Star Claire Bennett Signs with Major Recording Label." He clicked on it. The photo showed Claire at a signing ceremony, smiling widely, surrounded by executives in expensive suits. She looked happy, truly happy. Another article from 4 years ago. Claire Bennett's European tour sells out in record time. Then 3 years ago, Bennett to perform with London Philharmonic Orchestra. But then the article stopped. Just stopped. The last mention of Claire Bennett in the classical music world was from 2.5 years ago, a brief announcement that she had canceled her upcoming tour dates due to personal family matters. After that, nothing. Radio silence. She had just vanished from the music world. Vincent kept scrolling, searching for answers, but there was nothing. No explanation. No follow-up articles. Just a promising career that had suddenly gone dark. "Sir?" A voice interrupted his thoughts. Vincent looked up. It was a young waiter, probably in his early 20s. "Yes?" "Mr. Peter asked me to see if you'd like anything else, or if you'd like the check." Vincent shook his head. "No, Is Claire coming back out?" The waiter's expression changed, became more guarded. "I don't think so, sir. She's pretty upset." "Where is she?" "In the break room." "But, sir, I don't think she wants—" "I need to speak with her." Vincent stood up abruptly. The waiter looked uncomfortable. "I don't know if that's a good idea. I'm not asking for permission." Vincent's voice came out harsher than he intended, and he immediately regretted it. That tone, that attitude, that was exactly what had gotten him into this mess in the first place. He took a breath. "Please. I need to apologize to her." The waiter studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Through the kitchen, door on the left. But if she asks you to leave, you leave. Understood?" Vincent nodded and made his way through the restaurant. As he passed tables, people glanced at him, and he could see it in their eyes. They knew what he'd done. They'd watched him treat Claire like a servant, force her to perform, throw money at her like she was beneath him. Their judgment felt like physical weight on his shoulders. He pushed through the kitchen doors. The staff barely looked at him, busy with orders and dishes. He found the door on the left and knocked quietly. "I said I need a minute." Claire's voice came from inside, tight and strained. "It's not Peter." Vincent said. It's me, the man from the table. Can I come in? There was a long silence. Then, the doors unlocked. Vincent pushed it open. The break room was small and plain, with a worn couch, a small table, some lockers, and a coffee maker that looked like it was from the previous decade. Claire was sitting on the couch, still in her uniform, her head in her hands. She looked up when he entered, and Vincent was struck by how tired she looked. Not just physically tired, but the kind of tired that came from carrying something heavy for too long. If you're here to complain about something else, I really don't have the energy, she said quietly. No, Vincent struggled to find words. He'd given hundreds of speeches, pitched to thousands of investors, talked his way into and out of countless situations. But right now he had no idea what to say. I came to apologize. Claire laughed, but there was no humor in it. An apology. Right, okay. I mean it. What I did was... Vincent stepped further into the room. There's no excuse for how I treated you. I was arrogant and cruel, and I'm sorry. You humiliated me, Claire said, her voice shaking slightly, in front of a room full of people. You treated me like I was nothing, like I existed only to serve you. I know I did. Vincent felt his throat tighten. I looked you up after. I saw who you are, what you were. Claire Bennett. You played at Carnegie Hall. You won the Van Cliburn competition. You toured the world. That was a different life, Claire said, looking away. What happened? Why are you working here? Why did you give all of that up? Claire was quiet for a long moment. Vincent thought she might not answer, might tell him to leave, which would have been completely fair. But then she started talking, her voice soft and distant. 2.5 years ago, my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The words came out flat, rehearsed, like she'd had to say them so many times they'd lost their emotional weight. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe a year if we were lucky. Vincent felt his stomach drop. She didn't have insurance, Claire continued. She'd let it lapse when money got tight. She thought she was healthy. She thought she'd be fine. A bitter smile crossed her face. Funny how fast life can change, isn't it? I'm sorry, Vincent whispered. The treatments weren't covered. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental drugs, surgeries. Do you know how much cancer treatment costs without insurance? Take a guess, Vincent shook his head, afraid to speak. Neither did I, Claire said, until the bills started coming. 50,000. 100,000, 200,000. They just kept coming. I had some savings for my touring, but that disappeared in the first 3 months. Then I sold everything. My car, my jewelry, my apartment in the city. She paused, and Vincent saw her hands clench into fists. I sold my piano, she said, and for the first time her voice cracked. My Steinway. It was a gift from my grandmother when I won my first major competition. I learned to play on that piano. Every important piece I ever performed, I learned on those keys. Tears started rolling down her cheeks. I sold it for $70,000. Put it straight toward Mom's treatment. Vincent felt like he couldn't breathe. But it still wasn't enough, Claire continued. The bills kept coming. $800,000. That's what we owe now. $800,000 to keep my mother alive. So I stopped touring. I canceled my contracts. I moved back home to take care of her and started working. 3 jobs. This restaurant, a coffee shop in the mornings, and I teach beginner piano lessons to kids on weekends. 3 jobs, Vincent repeated, horrified. The cancer responded to treatment, Claire said, wiping her eyes. She's in remission now. But the debt, she laughed again, that same hollow sound. The debt is forever. I'll be paying it off for the rest of my life. There's no concert career anymore. There's no touring. There's just working and bills and trying to keep my head above water. But you're so talented, Vincent said. You could go back. Once your mother is stable, you don't understand, Claire interrupted. That world doesn't wait for you. There's always someone younger, someone newer, someone who didn't disappear for 3 years. I'm 28 years old. In classical music, that's old. By the time I pay off even half of what we owe, I'll be in my 40s. Nobody's going to hire a pianist who hasn't performed professionally in decades. She looked directly at Vincent, and her eyes were hard now. So yes, I play piano. I play it beautifully, actually, as you witnessed tonight. But I'm not a pianist anymore. I'm a waitress who used to play piano. And when people like you treat me like I'm nothing, like I'm just here to serve you and entertain you and do whatever you command, her voice broke completely. It reminds me of everything I lost. Everything I gave up. Everything I'll never get back. The room fell silent except for the muffled sounds of the kitchen on the other side of the door. Vincent stood there, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his entire life. All his money, all his success, all his achievements, none of it meant anything in this moment. He'd spent the evening treating another human being like garbage, and it turned out she'd sacrificed more, given up more, and shown more strength and courage than he ever had. "I have $200 million, Vincent said quietly. "Did you know that? That's what I'm worth. 200 million. I made it in tech. I'm very successful. I'm very important." He laughed bitterly. "At least that's what I tell myself. That's what I believed when I walked into this restaurant tonight." He pulled out his wallet, took out the $20 bill he'd thrown at Claire earlier, and looked at it. $20, he said. "I offered you $20 to perform a piece of music that takes years to master. $20 for something you've dedicated your entire life to. $20 for humiliating yourself in front of strangers while I sat there feeling superior." He tore the bill in half and let the pieces fall to the floor. "I am so deeply, truly sorry," Vincent said. "Not just for tonight, but for every time I've treated someone as less than human because they were serving me. For every time I thought my money and my success made me better than other people. For being the kind of person who could do what I did to you tonight and not even realize how wrong it was until it was too late." Claire stared at him, tears still on her cheeks, saying nothing. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Vincent continued, "but I want you to know that you've taught me something tonight. Something important. Something I should have learned a long time ago." "What's that?" Claire asked, her voice barely a whisper. "That being rich doesn't make you valuable. That success doesn't make you important. That the people we dismiss, the people we ignore, the people we treat as invisible." Vincent's own eyes were getting wet now. They might be the most extraordinary people in the room, and we'd never know because we never bothered to see them as human. He turned toward the door, knowing there was nothing else to say. "Mr. Drake," Claire called after him. He stopped and turned back. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saying that. For seeing me. Finally." Vincent nodded, unable to speak, and left the break room. But as he walked through the kitchen, through the restaurant, past the tables of people still talking about the performance, a thought was forming in his mind. An idea. Maybe, just maybe, he could do more than just apologize. Maybe he could actually help. Obi Vincent didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse apartment looking out at the city lights below but not really seeing them. His mind kept replaying the evening. Claire's face when he'd ordered her to play, the way her hands had shaken, the pure emotion in her performance, the tears on her cheeks when she told him about her mother, $800,000 in medical debt. For Vincent, $800,000 was nothing. He'd made that much in a good afternoon of trading stocks. He'd spent more than that on his car collection. It was pocket change. But for Claire, it was her entire life. It was her dreams, her career, her future, all crushed under the weight of those numbers. He picked up his phone and started making calls. It was almost midnight, but the people Vincent called were used to late-night conversations. Money never slept. The first call was to his lawyer, David Chen, who answered on the third ring despite the hour. "Vincent, what's wrong? I need you to do something for me. Tomorrow morning. Actually, today morning, since it's past midnight. And I need it done quietly." "What kind of something?" David sounded wary. He'd worked with Vincent long enough to know that late-night calls sometimes meant complicated requests. "I need you to find out where a woman named Claire Bennett is receiving medical treatment for her mother. The mother has pancreatic cancer, stage 4, currently in remission. There should be outstanding medical bills totaling around $800,000. There was a pause on the other end. "Vincent, what is this about?" "Just find the information. Then I need you to contact the hospital's billing department. I want those bills paid in full. All of them. Every cent. And I want it done anonymously." "Anonymously?" "Vincent, that's a large sum to pay anonymously. There will be paperwork, tax implications. I don't care about the paperwork. Figure it out. That's what I pay you for. And David, I mean it about the anonymous part. Claire Bennett cannot know this came from me. Can you make that happen? Another pause. It'll be complicated, but yes, I can set up a charitable trust, make it look like it came from a medical relief fund or something similar. It'll take some creative structuring. I don't care how you do it. Just make it happen. Today. This is going to raise questions, Vincent. The IRS. David. Vincent's voice was firm. I have $200 million. I think I can afford to pay some taxes. Just do it. He hung up before his lawyer could argue further. The second call was harder. Vincent scrolled through his contacts until he found a name he hadn't called in years. Richard Morrison. They'd gone to college together, but their lives had taken very different paths. Richard had become a concert promoter, working with orchestras and classical musicians. Vincent had always thought it was a waste of Richard's business degree. Now he wasn't so sure. Hello? Richard's voice was groggy with sleep. Richard, it's Vincent Drake. Vincent, do you know what time it is? I need a favor. A big one. At midnight? It can't wait. Vincent stood up and started pacing. You still work with classical musicians, right? Orchestras and concert halls? Yes, but Vincent, why are you... I need you to find performance opportunities for a pianist. Her name is Claire Bennett. You might remember her from a few years ago. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Claire Bennett? The Claire Bennett? You know her? Know her? Vincent, she was one of the most promising pianists of her generation. She just disappeared a few years ago. Nobody knows what happened to her. There were rumors, but... Richard trailed off. Wait, how do you know Claire Bennett? That's not important. What's important is that she needs to get back into performing. She's been out of the circuit for almost 3 years. Can you help? I don't know, Vincent. 3 years is a long time in this industry. Orchestras have their seasons planned out years in advance. Getting someone booked, especially someone who's been gone that long. Richard? Vincent stopped pacing. I'm not asking you to get her a concert tomorrow. I'm asking you to start making calls, put out feelers, see if there's interest. And if money needs to change hands to make opportunities happen, to get her in front of the right people, you let me know. I'll cover it. You're serious about this. Dead serious. Richard was quiet for a moment. If she can still play the way she used to, I might be able to do something. The New York Philharmonic has a series where they feature emerging and returning artists. It's smaller venues, not the main hall, but it's legitimate. Prestigious even. I know the director. I could reach out. Do it. But Vincent, I need to ask, why are you doing this? What's your angle? No angle. Vincent struggled to explain. I owe her something. More than I can ever really repay. But I have to try. After he hung up with Richard, Vincent made 3 more calls. One to a contact who dealt in musical instruments, specifically pianos. One to a financial advisor about setting up a trust fund. And one to Peter, the restaurant manager, to get Claire's contact information and address. Peter was hesitant at first, citing privacy concerns, but Vincent was persuasive. He usually was. By the time the sun came up, Vincent had been awake for over 24 hours, but he felt more energized than he had in years. For the first time in a long time, he was using his money and his connections for something that actually mattered. 3 days later, Claire was finishing her morning shift at the coffee shop when her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but something made her answer. Hello? Is this Claire Bennett? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who's calling? My name is Patricia Williams. I'm calling from St. Mary's Hospital Billing Department. I'm calling regarding your mother's account. Claire's stomach dropped. Another bill. Another payment plan she couldn't afford. Another reminder of the debt that would follow her forever. I know I'm a little behind on this month's payment, Claire said quickly, but I can get you something by Friday. I just need a few more days. Ms. Bennett, I'm not calling about a late payment. The woman's voice was strange, almost excited. I'm calling to inform you that your mother's account has been paid in full. Claire stopped walking. She was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, and people had to move around her, but she couldn't move. What? Your mother's medical bills, all of them, they've been paid, the entire balance of $847,312.18 has been settled. That's not possible. Claire's voice came out as a whisper. There must be some mistake. There's no mistake. The payment came through a medical relief fund. It's all legitimate, I assure you. I have the paperwork right here. A medical relief fund? I never applied to any medical relief fund. Sometimes these organizations identify patients in need through hospital records and grant assistance without an application process. It's rare, but it happens. You should have received a letter in the mail. But I wanted to call personally to let you know. Your mother's account is completely clear. You don't owe anything. Claire's legs felt weak. She stumbled to a nearby bench and sat down. I don't understand. This doesn't make sense. Miss Bennett, I don't know what to tell you except congratulations. This is wonderful news. Your mother's ongoing care will still need to be managed, of course. But the past debt is completely resolved. After the call ended, Claire sat on that bench for almost an hour, staring at her phone, trying to make sense of what had just happened. $800,000 just gone, paid, by someone, by some organization she'd never heard of. It felt like a dream, like she'd wake up any moment and find out it was a cruel joke. But when she called the hospital back to confirm, they told her the same thing. The debt was paid. She was free. Claire went home and told her mother, who cried so hard she couldn't breathe. They held each other on the old couch in their small apartment, both of them crying and laughing and not quite believing it was real. That evening, when Claire went to her shift at the Harmony Bistro, she was still in a daze. Peter noticed immediately. Are you all right? He asked. You look like you've seen a ghost. I got a call today, Claire said. From the hospital. Someone paid my mother's medical bills. All of them. Peter's eyes widened. All of them? Claire, that's amazing. I don't understand it. I don't know who would do that. Or why. Peter opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked like he wanted to say something but was holding back. What? Claire asked. Nothing. It's just, that's really wonderful news. You deserve it. But Claire saw something in his expression, a knowledge he wasn't sharing. The next morning, Claire was at her apartment when the doorbell rang. She opened it to find 2 delivery men standing there with a large object wrapped in protective padding. Claire Bennett? One of them asked. Yes? We have a delivery for you. Sign here, please. I didn't order anything. It's already been paid for. We just need you to sign for receipt. Confused, Claire signed the paper. The men carefully maneuvered the large object through her doorway. It took both of them to carry it. They set it down in her living room and began unwrapping it. As the padding came off, Claire's hand flew to her mouth. It was a piano. A brand new Steinway grand piano. The same model as the one she'd sold. The same one her grandmother had given her. Sitting on top of the keyboard was a small envelope. With shaking hands, Claire picked it up and opened it. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive paper. It said, "Forgive me. The world needs to hear you play again. You gave up everything for love. That's not a sacrifice. That's heroism. Your mother is lucky to have you. I hope someday I can be half as brave as you are. This is not charity. This is an apology and a plea. Please don't give up on your gift. Please don't let people like me be the reason you stop sharing your music with the world. The debt is paid. The piano is yours. What you do with your second chance is up to you. But I hope you'll play again. Not for me. Not for anyone else. But for yourself. With deepest respect and regret, VD." Claire read the note 3 times, then 4 times. Her hands were trembling so badly she almost dropped it. D. Vincent Drake. She sank onto her couch, staring at the piano through tears she couldn't stop. The afternoon sun was streaming through her window, hitting the polished black surface, making it shine like it was made of light. Her phone rang. She almost didn't answer it, but the number looked official. Professional. "Hello?" Her voice was shaky. "Miss Bennett. This is Richard Morrison. I'm a concert promoter working with the New York Philharmonic. I was wondering if you might have time to discuss a performance opportunity. We have an opening in our Emerging Artists series in 3 months, and I think you'd be perfect for it." Claire couldn't speak. She just held the phone, looking at the piano, tears streaming down her face. "Miss Bennett, are you there?" "Yes," she finally managed. "Yes, I'm here, and yes. Yes to all of it." When she hung up, Claire walked slowly to the piano. She sat down at the bench the same way she'd done thousands of times before. and placed her hands on the keys. And for the first time in almost 3 years, she played just for herself, not for customers in a restaurant, not because someone ordered her to, not for money or obligation or anything else, just because she could, just because she wanted to, just because the music was still inside her, waiting to come out, and it was beautiful. 3 months had passed since that night at the Harmony Bistro. Vincent Drake stood outside Lincoln Center in New York City, looking up at the marquee that announced tonight's performance. The Emerging Artist Series. Featured performer Claire Bennett, piano. He'd bought a ticket under a different name, paid cash, sat in the back row where nobody would notice him. He didn't want attention tonight. He didn't want Claire to know he was there. He just wanted to hear her play. The truth was, Vincent had changed in those 3 months. Not dramatically, not in the way movies showed people transforming overnight, but slowly, quietly, in small ways that added up. He'd started saying thank you to people, really saying it, looking them in the eye, meaning it. The barista at his coffee shop, the doorman at his building, his assistant who'd worked for him for 5 years and who he'd barely ever acknowledged as a person. He'd stopped eating at restaurants where he felt superior to everyone else. Started going to smaller places, local places where he was just another customer. He'd even sold one of his cars, a Ferrari he'd bought on impulse and driven maybe twice. He'd donated the money to a medical debt relief fund. A real one this time, not just the shell company his lawyer had set up to help Claire. It wasn't much. It wasn't nearly enough to make up for years of being the kind of person he'd been, but it was a start. The lobby lights flickered. 5 minutes until the performance. Vincent made his way inside. The concert hall was smaller than he'd expected. Maybe 300 seats. It was almost full, which surprised him. He'd thought this would be a sparsely attended event, but people clearly knew who Claire Bennett was. Or at least who she used to be. Vincent found his seat in the last row and sat down. 2 women in front of him were talking excitedly. "I saw her perform in Chicago 7 years ago," one was saying. "She was incredible then. I can't believe she's back." "I heard she just disappeared," the other replied. "Nobody knew what happened to her." "Well, she's back now. I read an interview with her in the Times. She said she took time off to care for her mother who was sick." Can you imagine? Giving up everything like that? That takes real courage. Vincent listened, saying nothing. His hands were clasped tightly in his lap. The lights dimmed. The audience grew quiet. A man walked onto the stage, probably the director Richard had mentioned. He gave a brief introduction, talking about the Emerging Artist Series, about giving talented musicians opportunities to perform. "Tonight," he said, "we have the privilege of welcoming back a truly extraordinary artist. Some of you may remember her from years ago. Some of you may be discovering her for the first time. Either way, I promise you're in for something special. Please welcome Claire Bennett." The applause started before she even appeared. When Claire walked onto the stage, it grew louder. She was wearing a simple but elegant black dress. Her hair was down, falling past her shoulders. She looked different from that night at the restaurant. More confident, more herself. She smiled at the audience, a genuine smile, and sat down at the piano. She adjusted the bench slightly, took a breath, and placed her hands on the keys. For just a moment before she started playing, Vincent saw her close her eyes, saw her shoulders relax, saw peace settle over her features, and then she began. This time she wasn't playing Rachmaninoff. She was playing Chopin, a nocturne. Something soft and beautiful and achingly sad. The kind of music that reached into your chest and squeezed your heart. Vincent had never been much for classical music. He'd always found it boring, pretentious, music for people who wanted to feel sophisticated. But this was different. This wasn't just technical skill. This was emotion poured directly into sound. He found himself leaning forward in his seat, completely absorbed. Claire moved through several pieces, some soft and gentle, others powerful and dramatic. With each one, she seemed to grow more confident, more radiant. This was where she belonged. This was who she was meant to be. The audience was completely silent except for the music. Nobody coughed. Nobody shifted in their seats. Everyone was transfixed. For her final piece, Claire paused before playing. She spoke into the microphone for the first time. "This last piece is dedicated to my mother," she said, her voice clear and strong, "who taught me that love is the most important thing." More important than career. More important than success. More important than anything. She paused. And to someone who taught me that people can change. That it's never too late to become better than you were. Thank you. She didn't say who that someone was. But Vincent felt the words hit him like a physical force. Claire began playing a piece Vincent didn't recognize. It was beautiful and complex, flowing from gentle to powerful and back again. It sounded like hope. Like second chances. Like gratitude. When she finished, the final note hung in the air for a long moment. Then the audience erupted. People leapt to their feet, applauding wildly. Vincent stood too, his hands coming together again and again, his eyes wet with tears he wasn't ashamed of. Claire stood and bowed, her face glowing with joy. Pure, unfiltered joy. This was what she looked like when she was truly happy. Vincent realized he'd never seen this expression before. Not that night at the restaurant when she'd been forced to play. Not even in the old photos he'd found online. This was different. This was someone who had lost everything and found it again. The applause continued for several minutes. People were calling out bravo and encore. Claire bowed again, clearly overwhelmed, before finally leaving the stage. Vincent waited until most of the crowd had filed out before standing. He made his way slowly through the emptying hall, not sure what he was doing or where he was going. He just knew he wasn't ready to leave yet. He found himself near the stage door. Security was there, keeping people back, but there was a small crowd of fans waiting, hoping to meet Claire, get something signed, say congratulations. Vincent stood at the back of the group, hands in his pockets, not planning to approach, just wanting to see her one more time, to know that she was okay, that he'd helped make this moment possible. The door opened and Claire emerged. She was still in her performance dress but had thrown a coat over it. She looked tired but happy, talking to people, signing programs, taking photos. Vincent was about to leave when Claire looked up and saw him. Their eyes met across the small crowd. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. Then Claire said something to the people around her and made her way through the crowd toward Vincent. The people parted for her, curious. "You came," she said when she reached him. "I didn't want to intrude. I wanted to hear you play. Really play. Not because someone forced you to. I wanted to see you where you belong. I got your note," Claire said. "With the piano. I meant every word. I know you did." She studied his face. "The hospital called. They said my mother's bills were paid by a medical relief fund. It took me about 3 days to figure out there was no such fund, that it was just a shell company created specifically to help us." Vincent looked away, embarrassed. "I asked my lawyer to keep it anonymous. He tried. But I'm not stupid and I have the internet." Claire smiled slightly. "Vincent, what you did, I don't even have words for it. You gave me my life back. You gave my mother her life back. You gave me a future I thought I'd lost forever. I was trying to apologize. That's a hell of an apology." Claire's smile grew wider. "But you know what the best part is? It's not the money. It's not even the piano, as much as I love it. Then what? It's that you changed. The man I met that night at the restaurant couldn't have done what you did. He wouldn't have seen the need for it. But you saw what you'd done wrong and you didn't just say sorry. You tried to fix it. That's rare. That's special." Vincent felt his throat tighten. "I'm trying. I'm not there yet. I still catch myself thinking the wrong way, acting the wrong way, but I'm trying. That's all any of us can do." Claire reached out and touched his arm gently. "Thank you, Vincent. For everything. For the second chance. For believing I deserved one." "You gave me a second chance too," Vincent said. "You taught me that money and success don't make someone valuable. That the people we overlook might be the most extraordinary people we ever meet. That humility isn't weakness. It's wisdom." They stood there for a moment. Two people who'd met under the worst circumstances and somehow managed to help each other become better. "I should go," Vincent said. "You have fans waiting. You have a career to rebuild. You don't need me hanging around." "Vincent," Claire said as he turned to leave, "my mother wants to meet you. She wants to thank you herself. Would you have coffee with us sometime? Nothing fancy, just coffee and conversation." Vincent turned back, surprised. "You'd want that? After how I treated you?" "People aren't defined by their worst moment," Claire said. "They're defined by what they do after it. And what you did after, that shows who you really are." Vincent nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "I'll text you," Claire said. "Peter gave me your number. I hope that's okay." "It's more than okay." Vincent walked out of Lincoln Center into the cool night air. The streets of New York were busy, filled with people going about their lives. People he used to walk past without seeing. People he used to consider beneath him. Now he saw them, really saw them. The couple holding hands. The tired construction worker heading home. The street musician playing guitar for spare change. Each person with their own story, their own struggles, their own dreams. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Coffee next Saturday. There's a small place near my apartment. Best coffee in the city. And they treat their servers like human beings." I checked. "Claire," Vincent smiled and typed back. "I'll be there." He put his phone away and started walking. He didn't call for his driver. Didn't hail a cab. Just walked through the city thinking about everything that had happened. Everything he'd learned. Everything he still had to learn. He passed a small restaurant with a piano in the corner. Through the window he could see a young man playing for the dinner crowd. Vincent paused, pulled out his wallet, and went inside. "Excuse me," he said to the server. "The pianist. He's very good. Could you give him this for me?" He handed her $200 bills. "And tell him it's not a tip." "It's an appreciation." For sharing his gift with us, the server looked shocked. "Sir, that's very generous." "It's not generous enough," Vincent said. "But it's a start." He left before anyone could thank him. That wasn't why he'd done it. As he walked home through the streets of New York, Vincent Drake thought about a waitress who'd played piano like an angel. About humility and grace and second chances. About the fact that it's never too late to become the person you should have been all along. He had a long way to go. Years of damage to undo. Years of being a better person ahead of him. But for the first time in his life, he was actually looking forward to the work, because being rich had made him powerful. But being humble was going to make him human.